Oh yeah. I usually tell people since I was 17, straight out of high school, I've been in occupations where people shot at me.
Hey, Dave, I'm super excited. You ready for another epic conversation?
Oh yeah, yeah. This is gonna be good.
The very first question, and this is like the most important question of the day. So, in your write up, it says that your mission in life is to find the magical best mug of coffee in the world. So, how did you decide that that was one of your missions in life? And actually, have you found the magical best mug of coffee in the world?
So to answer the last part first, no, not yet. That's the great thing about this as a quest is that I'll never find the best one. There's always more to try. Yeah, and so what put me on that one though is I'm a coffee nut, and but the great thing about coffee is most people don't realize there's more complexity in coffee than wine. Even there's the added benefit of the caffeine, of course, but the travel and the people. I mean, just searching for great coffee will take you to some amazing places, and you'll meet some crazy, interesting people.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that because when we travel, we always make it a point to find some local little coffee shop just to see
Yeah,
what's there.
absolutely.
And it's interesting because if you sit yourself down at the table and then you start talking to the locals, then you can have some pretty awesome conversations. What's your favorite cup of coffee then? Is it like a latte, a mocha? What are we talking here?
No, to be honest with you, it's just pure single origin Jamaica Blue Mountain coffee.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
kind of I'm a coffee nerd in my own way. I mean, everybody's a coffee nerd in certain ways. You know what we
Yeah.
put into it, that kind of thing. But Jamaica Blue Mountain's my favorite.
That's that's very specific. I have never heard that before. It's like I'll go and have the house blend, but or what's the Colombian or whatever the special is, but I haven't heard
Yeah,
that one before. Oh, that's cool. Very neat. Very neat. All right. Well, now that we've got that burning question out of the way,
yeah, the
I want
important
to
stuff.
yeah, you got the important stuff first. I want you before we launch into our discussion, we're going to talk on fear and I'm sure we'll go down other rabbit holes too. But what I want you to do is I want you to give just a brief overview of your medical background and training so that we can set the stage for what we're going to talk about because your background really does qualify you to have this conversation. And I want people listening who aren't familiar with you to get a flavor of who you are that they're going to
Yeah.
listen to today.
Oh yeah. I usually tell people since I was 17, straight out of high school, I've been in occupations where people shot at me. And not all those occupations where I shot back either. That's the weird thing. I mean, in the medical field, I got shot at more than I did in the Marines. And so after the Marines, I went into the Army as a combat medic. And simultaneously, I also did civilian paramedicine at the same time. I couldn't get enough, and I just really loved doing the hands-on stuff where I could help people and seeing people at their worst when I could make such a huge difference was kind of what drove me. And I joined every special response team I could. I did disaster medicine, I did water rescue, I did high angle rope rescue. I did everything I could because it was something I loved enough to do more and more. And other people were afraid of doing some of those things. And so I wanted to do everything I could. And eventually, though, I left hands on medicine, went back to school, got my doctorate in counseling. And so I'm still in medicine, so to speak. What I tell people now is I went from fixing bodies to messing with people's minds.
That's great. So I would think one thing that you mentioned, you were running into danger when other people were more inclined to run away from it. So let's go into the fear mindset and how did you get yourself prepared or how do you train your brain to be in that medical situation because you think about something like a car accident, people are not you don't have your brain in the right space. And as a paramedic, you have to have your brain in the right space. Talk a little bit about your training and in that background.
Yeah, oh yeah. It's a weird thing how sometimes when you're so focused on the job, you don't think about the danger. I mean, you know it's there enough to be cautious. Like something as simple as wearing a helmet or wearing a bulletproof vest when you need to, but the danger's still there, and it's weird because you can get so focused on the job and the people that you're trying to help that you're just as likely to lay down on top of them when people start shooting as you are to try to run the other way. It takes a special kind of person though, because there are people that find out when the first time something bad happens, they find out that they are the person that wants to run away. I mean, so not everybody can train that out of their system, but to be honest with you, it takes enough training and enough practice that it becomes second nature. You do it without even thinking about it. And you kind of, the fear's never gone. I mean, because fear, to me, fear equates with caution. It's what keeps me safe, keeps me alive. So it's never gone, but you tamp it down to where it's not the most important thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, so let's talk about that because people think that, oh, well, I'm just going to eliminate all the fear and then I can just trudge through. But that's not really what's happening in the body. What actually, what actually happens in the body? What's the body's physical response when something fearful happens? And, we'll go from there.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what everybody's learned in high school and on is the fight or flight response. Except I usually kind of add another one to that because of my sister. I call it the fight, flight, or give up response. My sister loves horror movies and things like that, but she always says that if she ever runs into a serial killer or a deranged clown or whatever, she's just going to lay down and die. And to me, that's what most people do. Fight or flight is where you should be. I mean, because even if I'm tamping down that fear, there's times when flight is what I need to do. Retreat, I need to run, I need to get back up. And so you want that to be part of your normal response. You don't ever want to get rid of that. It's the give up and lay down that I try to help people get past because most people will say that they think they're going to respond that way. And then guess what? They've thought it, so that's what they do. And so I want people to realize, you know what, you don't have to be that way. You can run, and most times that's perfectly fine. You don't always have to be the helper. Other times though, you got to fight, and interpreting fight as in helping, responding, doing whatever they can to jump in and just be part of the solution.
Yeah. How do you train yourself to know the difference between when you're going to fight for something and when you're going to fly from it?
That one, it's so situation dependent. You almost can't. It's you have to be level headed enough to look around and say, you know what, I'm outnumbered. Or in an emergency scene, it doesn't always have to be like a combat wartime thing. In an emergency scene, you realize, you know what, I need additional help. I need to stop long enough to get on the radio. I need to send for help somehow. I've got to do something that can get some other backup here and some other resources.
Did you ever have a situation where your fight and flight were opposed to each other? Like you should fly, you should run, but you really want to fight, or the other way around, you really want to fight, but you should run.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That is a especially it's where I'm protecting my family is where that's come in the most. Is like if something's going on and flight is what's needed, and I've got to get my family out. I've still got to stay behind or face the other direction and fight if need be. I recall a time where we were hiking and we saw three bears, three black bears, and this is actually near us up here where we live. And we had to get the kids and everybody up the trail. But the thing is, I didn't want to just all of us run up the trail with our backs to the bears. And so I was turned around walking backwards. I had one of the kids right behind me, one of the older kids, making sure I didn't trip over a root or something. And so it was just a staged retreat, if you will. And the thing is, I had to be ready to instantly stop fighting and fight if need be.
Oh, okay. Is there anything in your training that you guys used to do to kind of help your brain get ready, like any kind of training exercises?
Oh yeah, I mean we would make everything as realistic as possible, whether it was military or civilian medicine. I mean, we at some point we finally had mannequins and things that would actually squirt blood and make noises and all kinds of stuff. Make it as realistic as possible. We would do exercises where we would get people, and we call it moulage, where they put all the makeup on people and simulate injuries. And I'll be honest with you, some of that stuff it looks pretty realistic. I mean, you walk up, it's like a movie scene. You walk up and there's body parts and stuff. If it's a simulated airplane crash or something, and realistic enough that you actually feel like you're responding to that type of an incident. And so then it's through practice doing things like that that you can finally realize, you know what, no matter how bad it gets, I can respond normally in this thing. I can do my job. And and that translates not just from this kind of stuff. I mean, I don't want the listeners to think, you know, if you're not helping with plane crashes or in combat, it doesn't work for me. But it's in business. I mean, what if I don't know, what if you've got a stream of income on Facebook or Google or something, and an algorithm changes and your entire business shuts down in a day? I mean, that kind of an incident can spur on those same feelings. Do I fight or flight? Do I try to find another way around it? Do I need to just run from this, and shut everything down, and never be an entrepreneur again? And go get a job at Chick-fil-A or whatever. That's the way people think in business too.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question because we're not all paramedics. Me personally, if I see blood, I faint. So I fainted like twice already. I've had kids with broken bones, and I go into the doctor's office. I'll never forget one of them. The doctor's explaining the kid broke his finger. He's explaining it to me. I pass out. I was
Oh,
like, they didn't need the doctor. The story was the doctor caught me on my way down as I was passing out, but he was telling me
yeah,
how my son had, the injury that was on his finger, and so
yeah. The
I'm
doctor
not
didn't want to take.
built. Yeah, I'm not. He had two patients. I'm not built for that, So I'm not a good candidate for those type of exercises. But I think the point that you brought out is that having those situations that even if they're not happening, you have that thought process in your mind and think through, hey, what happens if Facebook does, change the algorithm and I lose
Yeah,
my stream of income? I
yeah.
mean, those are real areas. What other areas can you think of that people would want to consider other scenarios in that we could apply this to?
I would think about it in terms of your team, because the way you react, and a lot of people, if a lot of your listeners are like me, we're solopreneurs or minipreneurs. I mean, we run a lot of contractors. It's not like a lot of us in this kind of space have one and two and 300 employees, that kind of thing. And so it's even more important that a small team reacts well. Just to give you a kind of an idea from that is, I was hiking one time and came across some of these old railroad cars on this abandoned railroad track. And most people, when you see that kind of thing, what do? I mean, you do what I did. You start climbing on them and exploring and checking things out. Next thing you know, I've got a big crease in my head still from that incident. I busted my head wide open deep into the woods. And it was my wife and my 14-year-old son with us. And we had to hike out. I'd actually split one of the arteries in my head. And my wife literally had to take off her shirt so we could bandage my head and walk out before I passed out from blood loss at the ER. They numbed me up, so I wasn't feeling much. But my calmness and my ability to hike back out without passing out or freaking out helped my son get through that. So think about my son as part of my team. And so we're in the ER and the doc is stitching me up, and she calls out over to him because we told her we homeschool. She's like, "Hey, young man, you want to see the inside parts of your dad's skull while I'm stitching this up?" And so my 14-year-old son is like, "Oh yeah, that's pretty cool." And so she brought him over and she's describing all the different layers, showing him the artery and everything. And so I have to think that some of my calmness helped contribute to his calmness and excitement in seeing something new.
All right, that's just okay. So that's just an amazing story right there. That your son would come over and the doctor would say, "Hey, do you want to see that?" I can't imagine any of my kids at 14 years old. But you know what, Dave? That does go back to how you're training your kids and what you're doing for them. You mentioned that you homeschool, so talk a little bit how you bring what you've learned into your kids' lives and how that is going to help them as they become adults.
Oh yeah, I train my kids the same way I work with anybody that I work with as an adult. That's been a big part of it with homeschool and kids. My small children regarding full grown adults as peers. I mean, they'll talk to them just like they do kids because I've raised them that way. And the great thing about it is everything I do entrepreneurial, all the lessons I learn, all the failures I make, I can help teach them and show them how to do things. And I mean, my kids each have their own income streams, things like that. And so that they're better prepared when they step out into adulthood. My plan is for all my kids to have their own businesses, to have their own income. I mean, if nothing else, it's going to help keep them out of my basement when they're 25 years old. And, we can avoid that. Or if they're moving into the basement, it's because they're helping in my business and, they're part of the team. But, I help them to find their own passions and create businesses around that, which is kind of what I hope for all my clients too.
Oh, that's cool. So, what drives you to want to do this for your kids? Like to, because it's not the, I don't want to say it's not the norm, but it's not the default, that everybody
Yeah.
should have an income stream by the time they're 18. I mean, I love it. I think the idea is amazing. I wish somebody had told that to me when my kids were
Me
young.
too.
But yeah, right. So what drives you behind that?
I just want them to have options. I mean, the thing is, if they graduate high school and they go the normal route, which, I mean, the normal route, what is that? 4 years of college, lots of debt, a corporate job, or just a dead end job, but an hourly job, a W 2 lifestyle. If they do that, but they're happy, if they do that, but they're still doing what God built them for, I'm okay with that. But I want them to have options. I don't want them to ever think that 4 years of college and debt and an hourly job is what you have to do. And so I want them to see the rest of the world and realize, I could work from home, I could own my own business, I can be the boss as a young kid instead of working for a boss.
Yeah, oh, that works. Let's circle back around to failure because you mentioned very briefly about failures. What's your view on failure? How
Um, yeah, I think failure, I mean, it's something that you try to avoid as much as possible, but when it happens, you have to manage it. Because if you never have a failure, in my opinion, if you never fail in anything, you're not trying hard enough. And so I fail often, I fail a lot, but I try to fail forward every time and turn that failure into something.
Yeah, so failure is a learning opportunity, and I'm assuming you instill that in your kids as well. What is a recent failure that you had that you've learned from, and you're like, wow, I'm glad I failed at that thing.
Actually, today, before we started recording today, I was trying to build a website for a new venture, a new stream of income I'm working on. And I worked for hours and hours. And you know that thing about sunk cost, where we've sunk so much time or money into something that we don't want to give it up. I spent hours working on this website, and it finally clicked. I finally realized, you know what? I need to build this thing somewhere else. And all of a sudden, now I'm light years ahead of where I would have been later today if I hadn't realized I failed at the first attempt. It didn't work. I need to pivot. So as soon as this recording's over, I'm going to jump back on that thing and do it even better.
Yeah, that's the thing about building websites. It's almost like you're never done and you
Oh,
can always improve on it. Yeah, I taught myself how to build websites, and just for the sheer fact that I keep changing things, and if I had to pay somebody to do it, I'd be in debt. So
yeah, that's the
it's
thing. Us
it's
entrepreneurs, we like to be in control of things too.
yeah, we do like control. Well, and we're perfectionists too. So talk a little bit about being a perfectionist who loves control. How do you how do you contend with that? Because perfectionism, I mean, let's boil it down. Being a perfectionist is really an illusion because there's no such thing as perfect. So how do you view
Yeah.
it?
I am a perfectionist, and so I realize that I can be a perfectionist to a fault. And so now I try to always get something to where it's good enough. Seth Godin talks about that. He uses the term ship it, like ship a minimum viable product, and then you can work on it. But if you at least ship it and it's out there, for the vast majority of people, it's better than what they expected. And your perfectionism would have ruined that and robbed them of something awesome that helps them. But the thing is, if there's parts of it that don't work perfect, that aren't good enough, people are going to let you know you've just enlisted all that help. And so, that's why I like to just go ahead and ship a minimum viable product. It's good enough, and then I can enlist help. And I always reward people that help me. I mean, if somebody finds typos in my books, or they come back and they tell me something's messed up with one of my video courses, then I send them all kinds of bonuses and thank them, and help them for the work they put into my product.
Oh, nice. What are some of the things that you've created then?
I love writing, and everybody's doing their books and everything on Chat GPT and all that nowadays with AI, but I like writing. That's a skill and a passion God put in me. I just love disseminating information, and probably the most recent thing I put out was the Strangest Secret Challenge. It's based on the old Strangest Secret recording from Earl Nightingale. And so I put out a challenge, a journal, and the 30-day challenge for that. And that's been something fun because it's something I do that I wanted to help pass on to others.
Oh, cool. That's neat. Yeah, about writing. I actually I started a book as well and went away this weekend and actually wrote the book. And it's funny you should
Yeah.
mention Chat GPT because I don't want to touch Chat GPT. It's like
Yeah.
it's my words, it's not somebody else's words. I want them to be what I think should put on paper. Let's go back around to the body's physical response and reactions to fear because I've heard it talked about where fear and excitement are the same thing in the body. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. A lot of times they are. I mean, the fight or flight response in the body, basically, your body is going to shut down everything non essential. And so it's going to shut down, like, I'm trying to say it in a nice way. It's going to shut down bathroom activities. It's going to shut down digestion. It's going to start shunting all the blood and oxygen to the core of the body because where it needs it the most. And that's one of the main reasons when you get into a fight or flight response or you're incredibly excited, your hands will start tingling. And because all the main part of the blood flow is coming to the core of the body, to the main organs, the liver, the heart, the lungs, the kidneys, and that's an area where you definitely have to train a lot in military and medical aspects because if I'm getting really excited, really, the adrenaline dump has happened and my whole body is quivering, it's going to be hard for me to stick an IV. It's going to be hard for me to shoot a weapon and stay on target. And so that's something you really have to train for because you kind of train certain parts of your body to not respond to the fight or flight.
Yeah, because doesn't it do something to the brain too? It's going to shut down the part of your brain that makes those decisions as well. So if you're fearful
It
about
does.
something or you're excited, it's also going to
Yeah.
affect your cognitive ability. That's true then?
Yeah, that's another reason why eyewitness statements are generally sometimes regarded as not credible because people get into, let's say they're in a bank robbery or something, and they're trying to describe the bank robber that came in. Some of their cognitive ability is just messed up. They're not going to remember things the way they really saw it, and a lot of times they'll fill in those details from other things. I mean, TV shows, from it's crazy some of the times what happens when you take a witness statement or something.
Yeah, that like your brain is seeing something that may or may not have been true. And I think if we apply that to real life, like real life, and go back to the way we remember an event that happened maybe a decade ago or 20 or 30 years ago or whatever, that event that we remember, how we see that it might not actually have happened that way.
Yeah.
And if you can reframe it a little differently. So I'm part of a coaching program that combines ancient Stoic philosophy and modern wisdom. And we talk about when you're facing something that's fearful, and I'm not talking about physical pain. I'm talking about, like you have to get on stage or something, an activity that might well up fear on the inside. What they talk about is that if you're getting ready to do something fearful, instead of saying, boy, I'm afraid of this, I need to calm down, instead you turn around and say, I love pain, I love fear. Fear sets me free, bring it on. So, what's your initial reaction when you hear me say that? I love fear, bring it on.
Oh, that's that hits right in the spot because a war cry or something like that. Me and the kids, we go outside in the mornings and we'll do Tarzan cries, and it's amazing how energizing that can be. And so when you're in a situation, I mean, I'm deathly afraid of heights. And so some people wonder why I go rock climbing, why I go mountain climbing. It's because I am afraid of heights. But the thing is, when I can strap into that rope and lean out, looking over a cliff that would kill me if I fell, the first thing it makes me want to do is scream and just face it head on because I mean, what else can I do? I could sit there and just hug the rock and do nothing, or I can try to have fun and turn that fear into excitement.
Wow. Okay. So you're up there on the rock, and what what keeps you from becoming paralyzed in the fear? Because sometimes you hear that expression, right? You know, I'm paralyzed with fear, and some people actually that actually happens to them that they're so fearful they're not going to move. So if somebody's in that situation where you're quote unquote paralyzed with fear, and now you do have to move, how do you move?
For me, I try to go back to logic and reason. In other words, like I don't know, let's say I'm mountain climbing. I'm definitely afraid of heights. I look down, I double check my ropes, I double check my harness. And in my mind, I'm saying to myself through these physical actions by double checking, I'm saying to myself, I have done everything I can to make sure this is safe. I've done everything I can to make sure I'm not going to fall, that my ropes are tied right. And to relate that to business terminology, it's the kind of thing where you could say, okay, this business opportunity failed, but is it going to wreck me? I mean, is that opportunity failing going to keep me from ever doing anything again? I mean, even if it costs you money, and even if the funds aren't vast, you can still start over if you had to. But oftentimes you don't have to. It's just a pivot to do something a little different.
Interesting. What's some things you thought would be hard about being an entrepreneur and your approach to life, but really wasn't? And then flip it. What did you think would be easy and turned out being more challenging for you?
Something I thought would be easy. We'll start with that one. Support. Support from family and friends, and I'll be perfectly honest with you, even support from family and friends that are entrepreneurs. I mean, I've started ventures where I had good friends tell me that you're an idiot, you're stupid, you're gonna fail. Why are you doing that? And these are the people that are supposed to be my first customers. You know, we always go to friends and family first, and instead, it's the worst kind of discouragement because that's who you wanted it from the most. That's where you're going to take it the hardest. I mean, a perfect stranger can criticize me or leave a bad review or say things about me on social media, and it doesn't affect me that much. But when friends and family, and I'll tell you a weird one that really hurts me sometimes is we've all got our email lists, and we see the unsubscribes sometimes. And every now and then I'll see an unsubscribe on my email list from somebody that's a good friend, from somebody that's asked me to help them to sign up for their list, that kind of thing. And I don't know, that really hurts, that because you figured those were the core supporters. Um, I finally quit looking at my unsubscribes. I mean, I'll see the numbers, but I just quit looking at who unsubscribed because in the end, I realized that even though they might have been friends and family and I had expectations, they weren't my customers. They weren't the people I actually needed to sell to. And in all honesty, I mean, friends and family, we're going to give them our products or advice or anything anyway for free. And so, me worrying about that and getting mad and upset about that, I had to stop that because I realized that was something within me and not necessarily a lack of friendship.
Yeah, I mean, if you're selling shaving products and your sister unsubscribes, I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? She doesn't
Yeah,
need
yeah.
what you're
If I'm
selling.
selling bald head cream to my sister, then there's other
Yeah,
problems we've got to
right.
worry about.
I mean, that makes sense, but that's great advice though, because how often in life do those we put anxiety on ourselves by choices that we make and things that we do when really if we just chose not to do those things, we'd be so much better off. So I love the example. It's you get anxiety when you see a friend that's no longer, subscribed. Well, then just stop looking at the list. Who cares?
Yeah.
And then change your perspective on it. But that goes back to mindset too, doesn't it?
Oh
Like
yeah. Yeah.
how
Absolutely.
how you view what it is that you see life through. We'll go into mindset in a minute. So you did the what you thought would be easy but wound up being hard. What did you think would be hard wound up being easy for you?
That one we've kind of already touched on is shipping it before it's perfect. I know how I call myself non-clinical OCD, so I'm not so OCD. I have to do things or it's going to wreck me, but I'm very orderly and I love perfection and order. And so I thought it was going to be hard for me to ship things that weren't as perfect as possible. But finally, that was another mindset shift. I realized, if I stick to that, I'm never going to ship anything. Nothing is ever going to be absolutely perfect. And I read some stories about Microsoft in the early days, and they called it iterative processing, where they would release something knowing it still had bugs in it. And sometimes they knew what the bugs were. Maybe they didn't know how to fix them. And more often than not, I mean, that's why we get so many updates on Windows or whatever your operating system is. It's because Microsoft or the other company is using us to fix it. And that's pretty much the only way to do it, because people are going to do things on those computer programs that the programmers themselves could never imagine. Like, why would they mash those keys all at once? But now we need to fix it.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Let's go into the mindset. Let's go into the mindset thought there. The time that term is just thrown around a lot these days. So we hear mindset, everything all over the place. So for you, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when somebody says mindset?
Your point of view, the way you look at life. I am by nature, I'm a pragmatist, a pessimist a lot of times, to be honest with you. And so I've been trying to train myself to be what I call a delusional optimist. And so I'm not perfect at it yet, but hey, I'm living my life in the way I ship things. I'm not perfect, but I'm going to do it anyway. And so I'm trying to be a delusional optimist, just believing that everything out there is working in my favor somehow. I just got to keep hustling, keep working it, keep looking for options. And so just trying to look at life from a more positive aspect.
Yeah. Bring your faith into it then, Dave. How
Yeah.
do you
Um,
yeah, how does that play into your mindset?
that's an interesting one, because I find that the denomination I've grown up in, and kind of now I'm in like non-denominational Protestant, um, very, very pessimistic, and tend to look at life as in, God doesn't have good things planned for us. God is going to put us through. I mean, it's like we're living out the life of Job, and every possible bad thing that can happen to us is going to, and you just need to persevere. And there are times when that's going to happen. I mean, obviously, the story of Job, and God didn't promise everything would be perfect, but I believe that there's a God up in heaven that wants the best for me, and He has given me these amazing tools. I mean, the tools I've got up here, the family I have, the support I have. I've got to believe that there's something better for me than just misery the rest of my life. But a lot of my religious brethren, and I went to seminary, and I mean, I've been around it professionally for a long time. Um, I don't know. I don't like being around a lot of them because they're so negative.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of my experiences as well. Is I'm been going through this transformational journey in my life, I would say the last 7 or 8 months. And I also part of a non-denominational, I would say Christian, background for almost 25 years. And since I started more mindset development and growth in that area, I've come to pretty much the same conclusion that you were coming to, that it's just, there's a lot of pessimism out there. There's also a lot of, I don't want to say victimhood, but it's like, oh, woe is me. This is happening to me. I can't really control a whole lot of this. And this is just, this is what's God's will is for me. And I really struggle with that now, knowing a lot more information and background on things like your mindset, things like the law
Mhm.
of attraction. Are you familiar with the law of attraction?
Oh yeah,
And
yeah, big fan of that
yeah,
stuff.
and yeah, oh yeah, me too, me too. And how our bodies are, God has made us out of energy. Our bodies are energy, and this is scientifically proven stuff. I mean, I'm not just pulling this out of nowhere. This is what we are made of energy, and that when we vibrate at a certain frequency, positive, when we have joy, when we have happiness and energy and stuff, we vibrate at a high frequency. It's a high level of attraction. And then the low frequency things would be like fear and anxiety and anger, angst, things like that. We're operating at that lower end, and that positive people attract positive people. And what made me think of that is when you mentioned that there's some people like you just don't really want to quite be around them. And it's because they're giving off this type of energy that is not it doesn't really help lift you up or make you be optimistic.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, it
as a
makes sense.
Christian, as a person of faith, if it's my job to shine light into the world, how am I doing that if I'm throwing a blanket on that light?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And it took me a long time to come to that realization because I spent, like I said, I spent most of my life like, oh, wait a minute, like everything's all what was me. And, the Job perspective, well, okay, life's going to suck and might as well just, this is just what's coming my way. Where I realized, no, wait a minute. First of all, your mindset, you have to get your mindset in there and get the right framework and be positive about it. And no matter what circumstance or situation you go through, you can always find something to be thankful for.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
that is the one key I've found in the last couple of months anyway. I started keeping a gratitude journal and I heard about it before. And it's like, yeah, okay, I'll write
No, they
down
work.
one or two things that you're grateful for. You know what the turning point for me for the gratitude journal was that I truly believe took it to the next level? It wasn't just writing what I was grateful for,
Mhm.
it was also after that writing down why I was grateful for
Yeah,
it. That was the turning point for me. It wasn't just that, oh, my job went well today. It was my job went well today because, or, I got a book in the mail from a future guest. I mean, this was
yeah,
real. This happened yesterday. It wasn't just that I got the book, but also because that person put a note in there that made my day.
yeah.
Like so it took gratitude to a whole other level.
Yeah. Well, you can express gratitude for bad things in that way too. I mean, let's say something bad happens, you can be grateful and excited about how you handled it. Like today, this bad thing happened and I didn't blow up. My heart rate was even. I handled it, and it worked out fine.
Yeah, take mindset and pair it with the fear of failure. What would be your advice to one of your kids if they came to you and they said, "Okay, I have this fear of failure on this thing." What would your advice be to them?
I always tell them to attack it, just to attack that fear. For instance, I mean, like the things my kids have opportunities to be afraid of are things like volunteering for something in front of a group of people, or just jumping up and doing a task they haven't tried before. And that's my kids being not afraid to do that have given them tremendous opportunities as kids that some adults don't even have. I mean, they've had opportunities to speak in front of groups of adults. They've had opportunities to do adult jobs as kids. And since we homeschool, I mean, it's all career based and everything like that. I mean, it's amazing. Just stand up and attack it. In the military, before I went in the military, everybody always said, don't volunteer for anything. And so when I went into the military as a young man, I volunteered for everything. And it got me so many opportunities. I was promoted faster. I mean, it's amazing what that challenge mindset versus a fear mindset will do for you.
Yeah. I know for your kids, how many I know you have a daughter. You have just one?
Mhm.
Yes.
Four
And
boys and one girl.
for do you train your daughter differently in some areas than you do your son?
Um, Not much. So we make everything for her feminine because I don't want to train the young lady out of her because we have boys. But I mean, like for instance, yesterday morning, Mondays and Fridays is the weight room here at the house, and she's out there bench pressing on the bench right beside me, and so she is doing things that other girls never even think of or they're afraid of. But she may be sitting out there bench pressing beside me, but she might still be wearing a tutu. She might still be all dressed in pink. Matter of fact, when it's cold in the weight room out there, she's wearing these bright pink gloves, and so she's still a young lady, but she's still going to be as tough as my boys. I mean, she knows how to work on my car and like refilling the air in the tires, things like that. I want her to be capable. I mean, there are too many things that we've turned into guy things that the young ladies need to know how to do these things as well. I mean, if for no other reason, I don't want my daughter to have to depend on a young man for the simple things in life.
What's an important truth that very few people agree with you on?
Moderation. You saw the quote that I sent you. I won't say that first one because it might offend a few people. But let's see. Anything worth doing is worth overdoing. I'll state it that way. That's the nice version of one of my favorite quotes. And so, moderation, I'm not a big fan of moderation. I figure if you're going to do something, go all the way. And of course, I don't mean bad things. If you're doing bad things, stop. But if you're doing good things or you're doing what God's called you to do or where your life is leading you, jump wholeheartedly into that thing and do it with everything you've got. And so if it's worth trying all the way.
Oh, I got it. Okay. And not only that, would do you find that if you're going to do something in moderation, it takes you longer to accomplish that thing anyway than if you just jumped right in and did it?
And you're more likely to respond to fear. If you jump in wholeheartedly, I mean, let's go back to the rock climbing analogy. I mean, if I'm rappelling off the side of a mountain and I'm tentative, instead of just diving into that thing, I'm going to slap my face on the rock and it's going to hurt. And I don't want that. And so I'm just going to jump off and trust the equipment to handle me and the skill I have to get me down to the bottom safely.
Yeah. Isn't that the story of the buffalo and
Oh,
the cattle?
yeah, I
Yeah.
love that
Are you
story.
familiar? Yeah. Are you familiar with that story? Go ahead. For
Yeah.
those who don't know what that story is, go ahead and tell that story.
So it's one of those things that I'm surprised I never heard it sooner. But here recently, I've heard people talking about the buffalo and how they face storms. And so, imagine out on the prairie, these huge thunderstorms that are miles wide rolling across the prairie. And most of the animals will run. They'll run from the storm. And because of that, they get caught up in the storm longer. And I've heard it said that buffalo, they see the storm coming, the whole herd will turn and face that storm and just stand there solid as a rock, and that storm will pass on by. And because you're still and the storm's moving, it just goes on by. And so I try to take that into my own life as much as possible and just face the storms. Because when I do, they're over with quicker. I'm not saying everybody's happy when those storms come along or with how I handle those storms, but I find that things are resolved faster. It usually comes out with a better solution, but if nothing else, I don't have to deal with it as long. Face it, get it over with, move on to the next task.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, we should all be buffaloes. Sometimes it's hard.
Some people think
It's
I'm
hard.
shaped like a buffalo.
Sometimes that's hard to do though, and you forget, it's like, "Oh, I'm going through the storm. I wanted it to be over yesterday," but you have to realize that, it happens in the time that it needs to happen. And yeah, there's sometimes you can make those storms go faster.
Yeah. I mean, I've never had cancer, but I've heard it said that the mindset of people that have cancer, if they face it as a battle, as combat, as if they're fighting something literal right there in front of them, in terms of or versus just sitting there and I'm going to take this medicine and I'm slowly going to waste away. The people that choose to challenge cancer and fight it, they fare better. The medicine's more effective. They go into remission faster. They survive it longer. And so it's a great mindset in many different areas.
Yeah, I've seen that actually play out in real life. There was distant friend of mine, but somebody I knew of who this time last year was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, which
Mm.
is one of the worst, kind you can have. And he went into it with a fighting mentality. I'm going to fight this. I'm going to stay, see how long I could go. I'm just not going to lay down and give up on it. And you know, unfortunately, but he's in a better place now. He passed away last week, I guess. So he went almost a year on a diagnosis
Yeah,
diagnosis with pancreatic cancer,
that's a
where
long time
is
with pancreatic cancer.
it is because I had a stepbrother, and this is going back, I would say 15 years or so. He was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and he was dead in 3 months.
Yeah,
So I was very, very surprised. But to your point, I mean, there's a real life example that I'm familiar with anyway, that
yeah,
somebody who's going in and they're going to fight it. But at the end of the day, doesn't it just boil down to your mindset and getting your mind in the right place? So, what
it
are some
does.
things that you do for yourself to help keep your mind in a good frame, especially when things go south for you? How do you stay in that place so that you don't get too derailed?
Yeah, for me, the morning routine's absolutely paramount. If I don't start my day off right, my day tends to control me instead of the other way around. And so, a rock solid morning routine. I mentioned the strangest secret earlier. That's that old recording, and kind of before the law of attraction, it mentions a lot of the same things. And so, a lot of times in the middle of the day, I'll listen to that short recording, and it kind of centers me back because between my morning routine and the middle of the day, something's happened sometimes that derails everything. And so I need markers. Think of it like a buoy in a storm or a lighthouse in a storm. I need things that when it starts going bad, I can look to and say, that's not moving. That's what I need to keep my eye on, because no matter what the storm is doing, I need to stay focused on that.
Okay, so what's your morning routine's on fire. So what are some components to your morning routine?
I tell you, with 5 kids in the house, number one, I got to get up before the kids. If I wait and try to start a morning routine when the kids are up, it's chaos, and it's a good kind of chaos because kids are fun. But and so I get up as soon as I roll out of bed. I literally, my bed's pretty low. I roll into the floor and I start stretching, because I don't want to be one of those guys that the first thing I do in the morning is I wake up and I'm like, oh, my knees hurt, oh, everything's sore. And I'm 49 now, so I could do that if I wanted to, but I don't want to. And so I stretch, I go upstairs, I do prayer time, and I write out my prayers. My morning prayers, I write them out. I don't just pray to God. I sit there and write it in my journal. I do some Bible reading to open up my mind a little bit and think on something else. I do Duolingo, the app where you can learn foreign languages. And so I do a couple of Latin lessons in Duolingo just to kind of get my mind warmed up, because I've already been stretching. After that, I've got some breathing programs I do, and not so much meditation, but it's just some deep breathing exercises. And then I strip down almost to my underwear and I walk outside and I throw the kettlebells around for a little bit to warm my body up again. No matter what the temperature is, whether it's raining, lightning, snowing, anything, I go outside half naked and sling the kettlebells around. And then I'm ready
Oh,
for my kids.
there we go. And that's what time do they get up? I'm just curious now.
They get up around 7. They start getting up at 7.
Sorry,
Yeah,
7.
since we
Okay. All
homeschool,
right.
they don't have to get up too early, and they can
Yeah,
just
yeah,
kinda get
yeah.
up at
Well,
their own
that's
pace.
actually good for them. They get a good night's sleep. And for those who are wondering, we live in South Carolina. So those mornings are, you know, 37
Yeah.
degrees. They've got it, and it got down to, I don't know, what was it a couple weeks ago? 18 degrees,
Oh,
I think it
I had
was
to
in the
chip
morning. I
ice
was,
out of my cold plunge tank to get in,
oh my
because it was so
gosh. Yeah.
cold.
All right, that's a little too cold. Now, my part of my morning routine is I go and I run. And so I've been
Yeah,
running in the 20-degree weather, and I'll get out there and run my 3 miles and come back, and I'm very, I don't do the cold plunge yet, although I did just start the cold shower, and I did just learn
yeah.
about Wim Hof as well
Oh,
with the
part
breathing
of my breathing
exercises.
routine is, the
Mhm.
Wim Hof routine.
Yeah, 30 breaths. 30
Yeah.
breaths and meditation, and then the cold shower. And there's a lot of science behind
There
the
is. Yeah.
efficacy of taking a cold shower and the breathing and the whole Wim Hof method. For those who are interested in checking that out, it's not just woo woo. There's actually real stuff that goes. There's
Yeah,
actually real science that goes on behind it. Well, I'm the type of person that I will verify and then I will trust something.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's had some tremendous success aside from normal folks like us that just want a huge energy boost. I mean, autoimmune disorders, some things that it helps with that, I mean, the research out there for that is amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Dave, is there a question or topic you wish I would have asked you about? And how would you have answered the question or expanded on the topic?
Oh man, that's a big one. I mean, we could talk about hobbies and things like that. I mean, I'm a huge zombie nerd. But as far as let's just go back to the gratitude journal, because that's such a huge thing that makes a impact in your days. When I do my gratitude journal, I find that, and I think about it, I give it a chance. Like, what's the best thing that happened to me today? The thing that I'm most grateful for, and almost always it goes back to my kids. Something I did with my kids, whether it's wrestling with them or going out in the woods, just looking at leaves or whatever. It's just time with my kids, and so that drives everything I do. People ask me, "Well, Dave, why do you work so hard? Dave, why do you want to make more money? Why do you want to be wealthy someday and everything?" It's so I can afford more time with my kids. And so the caveat there is that I have to be careful not to work so hard, not to work so much that it takes time away from that. And so I just always try to make sure that there's some focus time on the kids, because that enriches their lives and mine.
Oh, sure. Dave, how many businesses do you have?
But that's a weird one because should I classify them as streams of income or separate businesses? Um, Probably, I would say half a dozen. Just a lot of different ventures and different areas that I get into, and each one dealing with a passion. I mean, I'm not going to start something. I spent too many years working jobs I hated, and to be honest with you, in the military, I liked my job, but the bureaucracy, and so I don't want to be around any of that. And so I do things now that enrich my life and make me happy, and give us the money to go on adventures.
Then how do you balance work and life and all the things that you do then to fit it all in?
I try to make everything kind of a lifestyle business to where it fits into my lifestyle. Like for instance, that website I mentioned that I'm working on, I've started doing UGC videos for clients. And basically, those are the selfie style commercials that you see on social media. And so I've started doing those, and they're kind of fun, and it's quick, easy money. But the thing is, I've got all these companies that send me products to try. Like a couple weeks ago, I had a guy send me 3 or 4 bags of freeze dried Skittles. And if you like Skittles at all, if you've not had freeze dried Skittles, they are amazing. Like it 10x is the flavor of a Skittle. And so this guy paid me a couple $100 to eat some Skittles, talk about it on video for his commercial, and then guess who ate most of the Skittles after that? Me and the kids. I mean, we use them for movie snacks. I had some at church the other day, crunching on them. And so, lifestyle businesses, things that help enrich my life, not just with money, but they help enrich my family's life by cool adventures, things we can be curious about, but they don't take time away.
It sounds really interesting. It really
Yeah.
does. So as we wrap it up here, this has been a great conversation, by the way, on mindset and fears, goal setting. Oh, we didn't even really go too much into goal setting, did we? We didn't do
No,
that too
not this
much.
time anyway.
Not this time. Yeah. You know what? Actually, let's pause right there a minute because I think you have a great outlook on goal setting. Talk a little bit about how you use it in your life and what it's produced for you.
I'm a big fan of. There's a book called The One Thing by Gary Keller. I think that's who wrote it. And I'm with my perfectionist. I'll make to do lists. I'll use making to do lists as a distraction from doing the things. And so I try to pick one thing I'm going to get done today. Today it's that website I was complaining about earlier. And so that's the one thing I'm going to get done today. And if I get done early, if I get done and I move on to something else, that's a bonus. But if that one thing's done, and at that point, I can quit and play with my kids and not worry about anything else. And so, with goal setting, just have one big goal that you try to get done every day.
Perfect. So let's wrap it up with what's one small step somebody can do today that's going to help them change their tomorrow?
Let's say just kill some fear. I would say for homework, if you're listening to this and you could do one thing to make your life better from anything I've said, pick something small that you've been avoiding. It could be something with your spouse, with your kids, with your boss at work, something small. I don't want you to take the biggest challenge you've got and face it head on yet. I want you to pick something small and destroy it. Destroy that goal. Get rid of that conversation, face that storm, and march through it. But pick something small because it helps build that mindset. It helps build that mental muscle that's going to help tamp down fear and increase the challenge aspect and the curiosity aspect. So start small, though. If you hit something big and it messes you up, then you might be afraid to try again.
Perfect. I love it, Dave. How can people find you?
DrDavidPowers.com. And I tell you what, even better than finding me, find that Strangest Secret Challenge. That's what it is, strangestsecretchallenge.com. Because more so than hiring me as a coach or anything like that, if you can get your mindset right, and you come to me later on, that's fine, but get your mindset right on something like, the law of attraction or the Strangest Secret Challenge. And I guarantee it's going to change every aspect of your life.
Oh, that works. Dave, thanks for the gift of your time. This has been an awesome
Yeah,
conversation. Love it.
always good.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I value your time with me and I seek to make every moment count. In order to make lasting change in your life, listening is usually not enough. So I want to ask you, what practical steps are you going to put into action today as a result of listening to this podcast? Remember, any step, any action, no matter how small, starts your journey to a big win. And if you're not sure where to get started, check out my website, personalcoachfinder.com, and find someone who can help. Remember, life doesn't get better by chance, it gets better by choice. Take small steps today and make your life awesome, friends.